Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, both those of you who are physically here with us and also people that are connecting online. First, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the American Federation, FLACMA, the organizers of this Conference of Sustainable Urban Mobility, and all its presenters and delegates. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here in a conference such as this due to its content and to its program. We have a very interesting panel now that will be like 1 hour and a half on transition of low-emission urban mobility in Latin America. This panel with some experts that are already with us. We will see something as interesting as the experiences of these policies made a reality that have been implemented in different municipalities to have a more efficient management of transportation to improve the quality of life of citizens and also to protect the environment. The agenda of FLACMA is totally in line with some projects that are being implemented in terms of Latin America, for example, with the German Agency of Development that have created the first practices community, which is the platform of sustainable mobility in Latin America, which offers a space for discussion for people, entities, and for those who are interested in creating networks, in discussing, in generating knowledge. These are very important things. Nothing can be done nowadays without cooperation with the contribution of citizens. So this is a platform that generates knowledge for the agents of change interested in improving the quality of life of citizens. And these are initiatives of a great impact towards a low-emission mobility that foster or that support the fulfillment of the Agenda 2030. Well, now I'll introduce the presenters. We've got Insa Ilian. She's a project director sector at the sector of sustainable mobility by GIC. Insa, she's an expert in technology and mobility. She specializes in smart mobility solutions and emerging technologies for sustainable development. She used to be responsible of tech detector at the GIZ. Her function is to coordinate efforts related with sustainable urban mobility. Insa, hello, good afternoon in Spain. Good morning.
Yes, so I am happy to start with my presentation. So wait a second, give me 1 second so I can share my screen. All right. Sorry for that. For being a tech expert, you always expect us to be more tech savvy. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. Very excited for this opportunity. So I would like to give a little intro on the potential of digitalization and international development cooperation and how actually future tech innovations impacts our work and actually like how we do our work mostly. So as you said, yes, I was former also a project director for assessing and analyzing emerging technologies and their potential impact on sustainable development. And I'm currently the project director of the sector program Sustainable Mobility. So I really like to merge the two ideas of like innovation and mobility. So this is also what I want to present here. So starting from scratch, I think in my understanding, technology innovations can be actually key factors for social, economic, and organizational change worldwide. And this means for me that we need to understand this like as a huge opportunity for all of our work and how we should look at emerging tech. So and also to understand like what we have experienced in the last years and decades is actually that technological innovation and digitalization enable comprehensive and transformative change. They are often the tipping point for specific transformations, and I think in regards to climate change, rapid urban growth, it is really crucial that we understand like how technological innovations can impact our work and development. So, in our understanding, to actually harness the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to make use of the potential of innovative technologies and integrate them into our work in a more, I would say, bold or more, yeah, like maybe like being a little more out there with new ideas and like testing new ideas and like experience something that might be like really new and innovative. But I think that's like actually how we make a change in a sense. And this is also something that we experience that we, at the same time, it often feels overwhelming because innovation cycles are actually shortening and the complexity of technology innovation is increasing tremendously. So this often leads to that we kind of like shy away from making use of emerging technologies in our work and like making use of like smart solutions because we think they probably are not as advanced or maybe they seem a little scary, so it's a little sketchy, like how do we actually work with it, and often we are not the experts in this. So in our understanding, but it is really important that we find a way to actually work with these new innovations in contrast to just look at them and like be scared of them or even like saying that it's probably like a bad development. So what does this actually mean for our work? And for our work, I mean actually like for us, especially in the transport sector. And as Gia said, it is really important for us that our vision is not just to react, but also to help shape and use the digitalization in the interest of sustainable development worldwide. Like we really need to be more proactive in how we make use of innovations and digital solutions. So, for instance, if we look at the transport sector, the gap in transport data is still immense. Like around 35% of the world's largest cities and 92% of the largest low and middle income cities do not have complete access to land use or transportation maps. And this is really important because this doesn't mean that that within these cities there is no data. It just means that the data does not lie in the hands of the decision makers. And that is an issue because they don't have like a proper understanding of the challenges on the ground in their cities. So this is why we also, like as part of the TUMI initiative, the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, we are digging a little deeper into data-driven mobility solutions. And why that? Like for us, it's really important to actually start with data because we really need to build reliable arguments why we choose certain measures. So for us, it's really important that the access and the translation of mobility data is there for local decision makers because they are most of the times no data experts and they don't have to. But we really need to translate the data that is accessible and also like provide access to this data so they have a better understanding like on what's happening here. And what follows out of that is actually that we create like data-based transport planning and also to really, and this is what we also do now, we experiment now a little bit with high-resolution satellite data and how we can actually make use of it for revealing movement patterns. Another direction we are facing now, and this is also, I think, very, very appealing for our work, is actually that we really want to tackle the challenge of the gender data gap in urban mobility. Because for now, mostly transport is very often planned by men for men. And to tackle this, we have our Women Mobilize Women initiative as part of the TUMI network. But we really want to dive a little deeper and connect the work on gender with the work on data. Because we really want to understand the needs and the movements of women and other vulnerable groups better. And this really needs to be done like actually with data gathering on the ground, like really starting from scratch. And on the side, and I think we are here like in a really great hybrid format of conferences, and this is something that the pandemic in the last couple of years really showed us, that we really need to explore new digital formats, like how we meet each other. And this is especially from the transport sector's perspective really important, because we cannot force flying around the world for like a one-day conference, because that is like by far not sustainable. So we really need to think about like different formats, like how we meet like in a digital or hybrid manner, but how we make it actually like a really good experience to really join a conference. So this is also something we experimented with our TUMI network this year with a 3D conference, where you actually had your own avatar and were free to explore the venue, which is, as you can see, like a little more nature-based. Yeah, and this is something that we also like explore. So yeah, I think this is just like a kickoff for this really exciting panel that we have today. So very excited for the next inputs, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Insa, for this information you have shared with us to know a little bit more on the advances and the developments in applications in a world that is seeing new technological applications related with transport, mobility, or gender. Now we will introduce the other panel members that will be sharing with us something really important. When we think of the perception of a congress like this, it is important that the input by the experts should not left as theory. These inputs should be made functional in the territory. Therefore, we'll introduce the next panel members that will share local experiences related with mobility. And then after the presentations, we will have a dialogue, a debate, to discuss new ideas and new things that we will see in these presentations. We will have Mario Silva presenting of Imeplan, data collecting system. He works in the metropolitan area of Guadalajara, Mexico at Imeplan. He has 15 years experience related with sustainable mobility and public policies of transportation as consultor, professor, and now as public servant and municipal policies by the College of Jalisco. She consolidated the coordination, the metropolitan coordination of Guadalajara, basically the plan of climate change of Guadalajara and the PIMOS plan. Also with us, we've got Cynthia Abad Machado. She'll be sharing on her experience, which is the Observatory of Mobility, the creation of a blockchain information for the transparency of public transportation in Terezin, Brazil. She is the special coordinator of the Agenda 2030. She's an urban planner. She's a member of the network of Latin American women, and she is a Brazilian woman that's a leading expert in sustainable mobility. She co-created the pilot project of the transport observation, part of the Duro Clima program financed or funded by the European Union. Also with us, we got Verena Flus. She'll be presenting on the calculator of emissions, on the virtual calculator of emissions. She works in the GIZ in Germany. She's been in the team of mobility of the agency. She coordinates projects of sustainable mobility in Latin America and Morocco, and she contributes to the development of new formats for mobility. She's now on my left. I have Jesus Padilla. Hello, Jesus. Jesus is the General Director of the corridor. He's a Director General of the FISA group that represents over 25 companies of public transportation in Mexico. They operate more or less about 2,000 units. He founded in 2008 the Mexican Association of Transport and Mobility in order to improve the coordination of mobility stakeholders and transport stakeholders and users. And also with us, we got Andrea Palma. She is a technical consultant of GIZ, and she'll be the moderator for this debate that will let us know about the experiences and projects, practical projects at local level. She's an architect by the University of Valparaiso with a Master in International Relations by the Richmond University of London. She worked in the municipality of Coquimbo at the Ministry of Education for the implementation of public policies and in the Ministry of Building and Construction. She started to work since 2016 at GIZ as National Consultant for the project Global Cities for Climate Change, and she's the technical consultant for urban mobility. Sorry if I have just said any data that are wrong, I'm sorry, but it is a pleasure to have you all here today to learn about your experiences. So, Andrea, you are the moderator. Well, thanks, Fernando. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning for those of us in Latin America. We'll start this debate by having more detailed information about the experiences of our panelists. So I'll ask Mario Silva to tell us about the digital tool of data collection for implementing new systems of sustainable mobility. Well, thanks, Andrea. Good morning, good afternoon from Guadalajara, Mexico. We are very happy today to be able to share this tool that promotes the use of public transport as part of our strategy of clean transportation and low emission transportation. And today we have received the award of Global Climate Action by the UN. That has been given by the UN to 11 initiatives around the world, and our plan of Metropolitan action, where we have this tool that is called Periplo, is part of this strategy. So it really makes sense to give you a presentation on this context. I'd like to tell you that what we are aiming at is to promote low-emission transportation in the metropolitan area of Guadalajara, and we detected, working together with GIZ, is that an essential component is the access to information, also the knowledge about the transport networks and the options that we have for moving. And even though public transportation is a field where users usually know how it works, which are the routes, we have identified that in order to promote an exchange of trips and an exchange of modes, we have to make options without an engine more appealing for the users. The mobility in the metropolitan area of Guadalajara has some special features. We have an urban transportation system which is massive, made up by a rapid transit bus that we call Macrobus, and we are finishing the second line of 42 kilometers in the suburban area. So I think it's the fast track bus line, which is the largest in our country. And also we have some electric trains and a route for transportation with electric buses that travel to the international airport of Guadalajara with 38 units, with part of the support that we get for international development, and also it includes the gender aspect because we're introducing women, female drivers. We have a public bicycle system with 300 stations, over 3,000 bicycles, and some bicycle lanes. Over 116 kilometers of bicycle lanes that we have been implementing as part of the social movement that has gathered around the use of bicycles. In our city, we generate over 12 million trips a day. 4.4% of them are on public transportation, and there's some specific components related with COVID. 66 of these trips were done, 66% on e-trains, and also 37% on the rapid bus. And also our bicycle system has had 17 million trips so far with over 10,000 users. Our city concentrates most of the vehicles. Therefore, the idea of having a tool for coordinated intermodality is essential if we want to reach any goals in terms of demotoring. This is 40% with percentage of the population. Guadalajara is a city of over 5 million inhabitants, so you can understand this is a very complex project. We are in a land of over 2,000 square kilometers. I have already mentioned this data of the public bicycle system. In order to carry out this work with the Periplo tool, it is important to say that digital tools must be complemented with a reorganization of public transportation, with the deployment of some infrastructures for mobility without engines. And what we are doing is a work of generating data of planning mobility, but also for planning the primary areas and also the land resources in the 9 municipalities that we have in our city. And we cross this information with some specific aspects of mobility. We are finishing our sustainable urban mobility plan with some international support as well. And these are some of the strategies that we are implementing. We have already mentioned our Metropolitan climate plan. We have some strategies. This is a plan that integrates the actions of the 9 municipalities and also of the state government. And in the city, the planning work involves the work on over 1,300 civil servants. And the goal is to have an efficient and sustainable mobility system without engines. We have goals like increasing 20% of the uses of the electric train compared to 2018, raising at 42% the offer of bicycle lanes, and also to raise by 13% the low emission vehicle public transportation, and also to implement 2 new lines of fast traffic buses, like the one I've just mentioned, to the international airport. The tool for these projects to go forward is information. We want to mitigate by 2030 and by 2050. We want to be carbon neutral. We want to mitigate the emissions that we generate in the transport industry, which is the second one in terms of emissions in Guadalajara. I would I'm going to finish by telling you that Periplo is an application that's already available. You can start using it. We're in the pilot phase in order to raise the base of users and to generate interactions and thus to produce data. The information is available in the website of Imeplan. And now with the application you can program trips, routes, just by entering your origin and your destination. And it gives you different options for public transportation or public bicycles or any other options for getting to those destinations. In this pilot phase, we are validating the model. Um, we want to complement it with the offer, with the already existing offer. We know there are other options like Google Maps or other apps, but this one is generated with information that we gather as a public institution, with information that we have developed with the updated data with all the lines that we have in our country, also with the updated information of heavy-duty transportation, also with the bicycle initiative. So we believe that the more technology options people have to program their trips and to make the right decisions, and that there is a smart component to mobility based on data, is much better. So we invite you to take a look at this tool, and I'd like to thank you. Well, thanks a lot, Mario. I'll, the message to take from your presentations is these tools to program trips. They are key to move towards the decarbonization of our transport system. Thanks, Mario. We'll move forward to see the case of Teresina in Brazil, where we'll have Cynthia to explain this, the application of a blockchain information system for the transparency of the transport system at Telesina. Cynthia, I give you the floor.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Nice to meet you, everyone. I would like to say thank you to have this opportunity to present our project in Terezina. It's a pilot project that's inserted in the Eurocrima program. And can you see my presentation? Okay. So my name is Cynthia Bartz. I'm head of the Agenda 2030 department in the municipality of Terezina, and I'm here to represent the Observatory of Transport, open innovative process for public transport transparency in Terezina. But before we explain a little bit, give a little introduction of Terezina. Terezina is a capital of Piauí in Brazil, and the northeast of Brazil, that have a population approximately 800 to 70,000 inhabitants in 1.2 million inhabitants in the Metropolitan region. And we have a low GDP, approximately 5.6 billion, and per capita $6.7 $600 people. And before explain our project, I would like to explain how we are situated in Terezina in context of Brazil. We are in northeast of Brazil. We are very close to Ecuador line, and this reflects directly in our climate. Terezina has semi-arid tropical climate with high temperatures and low humidity, and we are just in the red spot there. Unfortunately, our city is getting warmer at a rate that is twice the global average. So when we are planning a proposal, we always try to mitigate the situation or revert the situation that we are facing right now. For example, on top of that, we have an accelerated urban growth with poor infrastructure, extensive land compulsion, with a low density urbanization pattern and a high motorization rate. Here you could see that the rate of public transport don't decrease, but the private cars, it decreases a lot. So we need to make the difference here. And how could we do that? The Observatory of Transport, it's a response of that, sorry. But then before I explain the project, I would like to explain a little bit the context that Terezin was facing. It is similar to what Brazil was facing that time. It was around 2017, and we have a very high fare here, with a growing competitive sector like motorcycles and transport apps, a low quality of fleets and operation that is impacting directly in our demand. For example, we had a drop of 36% in a paying passage between 2014 and 2019. So Teresina was facing situation that could bring a collapse in the transport. And but at the same time, the municipality was expend a lot of time and resource and money to invest in public transport. We are during transition for a line that to a BRT system, and we changed the bidding to have a more control in the content, but this is not making the efforts that we think we need to do. And the transport is a very I still have a negative image of the service by the users in an efficient system. And we have a distrust relation between stakeholders that is based more in the inefficient distribution of information, data that is not open to citizens. We have a lot asymmetry information, a lack of opportunity to participate by the citizens, and everything this is reflected directly in the use of transport. And in this project, we would like to change the situation, transforming a more trustful relation between stakeholders. But how we do that? We do that in the UEFA Observatory that have a unique distribution of data and a safe way, in a safe way. And our project, Observatory of Transport, try to solve this issue with use of technology in the process, open innovative process with a minimal viable product that will bring in the end of the project. And I would like to emphasize here that the project bring more a dialogue with citizens to bring people back to public transport. They need to understand what's happened and be here to have the opportunity to use the transport the better way. So the project Observatory of Transport has two phases in their development. And the first phase is a baseline. And in the baseline, we have a diagnosis and identification of the prioritization of the main issues. All the phases of this project was a very participatory process, because here we engage all the actors, the stakeholders that are involved, because the diagnosis needs to be a participation process. Can't be just the municipality or the operator saying what is the problem. So in this moment, we hear every stakeholders. This is a organization, user association, students, university, the public administration, being the transport department, planning department, and the operators. It's companies and the association of companies and association of drivers too. They participate in this process. And then when we had all these issues aligned, what is the prioritization of these issues that will help us to have a better dialogue with citizens, we pass it to step 3, is review available technology. If our project is to address technology on top of these issues, we need to understand what technology we already have to address these issues. because I know that many issues that we will show you here, they are very common. We have a lot of solution, but in context of Brazil, Teresina don't have a lot of budget to expand in expensive system, for example. So we search for a solution that could address the problem, but could be affordable. But how I will show here, we pass all these issues to a next phase. That is step 4, recommendation report. That we, as I say, the problems that we found here, we organize with a high degree of influence. That means if I solve this issue, these problems, I could partially solve other problems in the public transport. Or low degree of dependence. If I solve this one, I need to solve others problems to have a better and more effective result. So this was the range that we put. A lack of real-time data that could very easily be addressed by a new technology, a lack of inconsistency of information, a lack of indicators measuring for decision maker, a lack of network optimization, a lack of financial monitoring, a lack of regular certification of the service provided, a lack of control of the use of a free rates card. When we organize these issues, these problems, we organize understanding that these questions could be answers during the process, or open innovative process, could be answered with our technology. If we need to have an infrastructure solution, this will not be possible. So talk of these questions. And here we are all this process, that the first phase, to all the stakeholders. As I said, the stakeholders, they are present during all the process. We here have the consortium, the companies, users, the municipality association, because they will be mentors in the next phase. They need to be part of the process and address exactly what do they want, what are the questions, the issue, the problem that they are facing in each situation. And so the phase 2, the development project, we did an open innovative preparation and conception of the pilot project. We open application and people apply to participate in this project. So we have 2 phases in the open process, open innovative process, the workshop 1 and 2. The 1 was more to relate to inform what was the problem, the intent of the municipality, take doubts with our mentors, explain more about how this problem it's happened, why it's happened, how can we solve this one problem. And we have 21 teams. They showed proposal, and to pass to second phase was just 10 proposals. That we were the second moment, the second workshop was more to make this proposal viable. So this is really possible to do. Really, we have the information, we have the data necessary to work in this box. And the phase 3, we choose 3 projects that now are being designed. We are just in this phase, design this project, because they move from a moment that they have ideas to solve these problems. Now they are working to really show that the solution is possible, presenting us after a proof of concept. The 3 projects that we are working right now are first one, Jaggers, quality creation of quality indicators management system to assist in decision making by managers. And this one, they help us not just to have indicators, it's something that we already have in a way, but identify different patterns or inconsistent information It's more to see if something's wrong, especially with companies, because to help us create this trust relation between municipality and companies. And the second one, it's a Prontuário do Busão. It's a digital solution for maintenance of bus fleets by driver in direct contact with company garage. We have a driver in this team, and he talked us about how was complicated to have a good relationship between the drivers and the company, especially when they have a problem with the cars, the bus. And this system will help to align the information, have everything aligned, and to help this dialogue between one another. And the last one is a system that Uptime, system that aims at organized bus routes. And this one will help us, the municipality, to plan the routes, but especially to help us to make a better investment in infrastructure, because they will show us if we do adjustment in some street, will help us to have a faster gain of time. The bus will get faster, so this will help us in a planning way. So we are in the phase 3, but in the phase 4, the step 4, it's just exactly the phase when we will address this project to citizens and show them the solutions, and we will make a scaling up proposal that this solution could be used in other cities, because our project, it's open source, so everything that will be designed here will be open to other cities use to solve their problems too. But just to conclude, the observatory, they have, it's not just the process, open innovative process, but it's an observatory of information of transport to help to get this information in the citizens, they to trust more in the municipality. But how could we address this information in a way it's easy to people understand, and to link with our website. We are doing a tactical urbanism action in bring some questions to streets. For example, we have a pie chart here that have a question. Did you know that 28% of citizens use public transport? So they will understand that this information they have more information in our website. They will search, they will look for, they will question the municipality in this information. But how could we improve here? How could we improve that and bring more? We want the citizen participate more in the process of planning the public transport and question more the municipality, because to have more a social control of the public transport. And the last moment is that implementation challenge in lesson learned, because the project was planning to be in a presential mode, but was everything in a remote mode. So we need to understand how to communicate with stakeholders, how to engage them and make them participate in the process, because some of them, for example, users sometimes don't have even a good cell phone to talk with someone. So you use the platform they already have to communicate with them, to make them participate in all the process. For example, WhatsApp, Google Forms, simple ways. And another important point is how to articulate with the local government, because we know here in the municipality, I think something common in Brazil, for example, that it's difficult to open this information from the public transport to citizens, because we have a lot questions. People question a lot the municipality. We have facing a crisis right now. For example, people are making a lot of questions. How could answer these questions? It's open this information in our observatory. Thank you. I finished my presentation.
Muchas gracias, Cintia.
Well, Thanks, Cynthia. It's very interesting, this observatory you're working with. I like to take the message of this challenge that you have mentioned, which is the quality of the data, the improvement of the relationship between stakeholders, and how to um, how to foster the participation of citizens in the improvement of these networks of mobility and transportation. Thanks, Cynthia. Now we will have Verena Flus. I have the privilege of working with her, and I'll ask her to present the calculator of emissions of Mobilize Your City. Verena, you have the floor. Hi, Andrea, do you hear me all right? Yes. Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to this activity. I think we have seen two very interesting examples of these labs that work for the transition to a sustainable mobility. And what's clear is that technology, and especially advanced and digital technologies, play an important role. But we also think it is important to have simple tools available that are accessible and that help us have or to monitor this transition. And I like to present to you an example of a tool that we have designed to this end. It's called the Calculator of Emissions, developed by Mobilize Your City. And I think what we all agree is this: what you don't measure, you cannot improve. Because if we don't have an idea or of where we are, what are the figures, what were the figures in the past, we won't be able to design strategies to improve. So it is very important, this idea of measuring and quantifying. And we currently have a sad example at global level, which is very important, which is the pandemic. We are seeing how important measurements are, real-time measurements are. All countries, according to their possibilities, they are trying to track COVID cases. They have designed over the last years, the last months, strategies to test, to be able to know what are their situation and be able to make decisions and take action, because they know if you don't take action, in the near future you will have a negative result in terms of infected people. And in the case of climate change and emissions, we are in a similar logic, but this is in a slower pace, so it's not easy to see. If you take an action today, the impact you will not see it tomorrow. But the system should be the same, monitoring and tracking, in order to know what we are bound for. And if we think of monitoring emissions, this is the topic I'd like to focus on now. We deal with different moments when we are monitoring and observing emissions. We can do it before introducing a measure. We will recreate scenarios to see what this action, what could be the consequences of actions in terms of reducing emissions or improving public transportation and e-mobility. So this is important in order to be able to make the right decisions. And it is also important to understand where we are now. In order to know this, we carry out an inventory where we can see our situation. And finally, with this, we can forecast, like if we don't change anything, we will get to this result. And finally, we can run an assessment of the measure once we have been using this measure, this action, to see whether it works and how it works. So we got this panorama of different moments of meditation. So how can we use this tool? Well, this tool can help us analyze the health check, the situation, and the inventory for 1 year. It helps us to have a baseline, taking this year as a reference, to know whether in the following 20 or 30 years, if we keep on doing the same things, what will be our situation. And finally, to take into account the measures that we have taken and formulate scenarios to understand what we can reduce. So I don't want to read the whole definition here, but what I have just explained corresponds with the goal for developing this tool of Mobilize the City. Some general comments: this tool is focusing on railroad and road transportations. We don't take into account maritime transport or airborne transportation. Calculations can be carried out at local level or national level. Possibility offers the two possibilities. It is open source, so this is not a very complicated software, so it is very transparent to understand what's going on within the tool. What's most complicated is the compilation of data, because this is what we need: data from many different sources, and this is a work of cooperation and coordination in order to get this data. This data that should be high quality data. And finally, this corresponds with the international demands, but this is not an ex post assessment tool. We cannot, after taking a measurement, we cannot know what's the result. It's just to offer some sets of measures to learn what's their impact. Without going into detail, and just to give you some idea of what's the rationale, we are based on avoiding, changing, and improving in order to learn what level of emissions we could have in different emissions. Also a territory approach, so we have to define the limits of the system in order to take into account what's within these limits, and also this bottom-up approach. So it is based on real activity of transportation, and not only in the sales of fuel. These are the two ways to calculate, and we do take into account the total of fuel used, but this is not the only thing we use, because it does not give us the information on who's using this fuel and how. We're trying to see this from the bottom, from the activity of cars. We won't go into detail here, just for you to see that data are very important, and that there are many data of different types that need to be collected, and we have to make a great effort to have them in a systematized way. And just to explain to you how we do inventory, baseline scenario, a climate scenario, how they are calculated, how by changing or making a distinction between railroad transportation, road transportation, and then passengers or goods, transportation of passengers, of goods. And I won't go into details, but I'd like to use one more minute to show you the tool. I hope it works and you can see, you can keep on seeing my, can you see it? This is the tool I'm opening that we use for the case of Morocco. You can choose the country and then and also change the language. So it is Morocco and it is in French. This is where you have all the data, all the entry data for the inventory. We won't be seeing the details, and also for the baseline. And then we do the validation with the consumption of energy and the different inputs for the climate scenario for the different subsectors. And what I wanted to show you is what we get at the end of a process, which is quite a long process, which is like an interesting vision, an intensive vision of the situation, starting with inventory, the composition of total emissions, the business as usual, which is the baseline of the evolution of the emissions, and then the reduction, the impact in terms of reduction of emissions. I don't want to use any more time, but I hope I have given you a general idea of how it looks like. And we are applying this tool with different countries in different contexts, and I'll be glad during the debate to explain more into detail this issue. Well, we have it online. We could go into detail later. So, this is a tool to work based on some measures, bottom up, so it allows to include other variables which are not only the consumption of fuel, and this is very valid information at local and national level in terms of sustainable urban mobility. We'll ask now the last presenter, is Jose Padilla, to tell us about his experience from the insurgent corridors. I don't know if he's there. I cannot see him from here. Well, there he is. Well, thanks, Jose. We give you the floor. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks to the organizers and also Fernando for bringing us to this beautiful city. And thanks to Zoom 21, which gives us the opportunity to share these important topics. I'm Jesus Padilla. And I liked to tell you about what's going on in Latin America in terms of the change of mobility as an operator. And I like to say that whenever I travel, and this time after 2 years, I really enjoy seeing that there are many people in the world discussing about such important things related with the transportation of people, and that these efforts of data analysis are an essential platform for things to go faster. We would think that it is essential that the environment, the industry has gone faster than the will of our governments to change the mechanisms of production and delivery of services to users. We are in emerging markets. We're seeing what is happening. Electromobility is a consolidated trend. We can see also the tangible benefits of electromobility. Some emerging markets that are different. There are some differences, and they concentrate the 40% of the electric vehicles, but they sell only an 8% of these vehicles. As it is said here, these markets are concentrated, and China is the first power that anticipated the rest of the world in terms of electromobility. Europe, Japan, and the United States are trying to support these changes now, but this has been related with aspects like quality of the air and industrial aspects. So the question here is, how do we add to this process? Electromobility in Latin America. We have as a reference Chile, Colombia, Brazil, that have developed innovating models of businesses to compensate the initial costs of electrification. As you know, in Latin America, it has been very hard to professionalize this industry, and we have made different attempts over 60 years, and we have lots of experience in terms of what should not be done. In the case of Santiago, Chile, the model based on the acquisition of vehicles, also like the business model based on a fleet provider that buys the hotel and then the bus, and then the private company is selling the electricity. In the case of Sao Paulo, this is where they rent the battery and they buy the rest of the components. We have an important situation in Santiago, Chile, since we had the boom in Santiago. This was an example of things that we didn't want to happen, but all crises are also opportunities, and now today we have this opportunity to move towards a green fleet. Then we have Bogota, and also with tender processes with very important crises, but today they're having very good results. And of course, Brazil or Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and some cities that have one of these models that are already consolidated. If we have a tendency that seems to be increasingly consolidated for electromobility, this is happening around the world at different paces. We know that this has happened already in Europe, and we hope that like in 15 or 20 years, in the case of Mexico, we would be having a 50% of our fleet that's totally electric. So we're in a globalization process of what happens in one place that happens later in other places. And we have some states in our republic that are very interested in electromobility with the risks and challenges it implies. Here we have a timeline of what has happened. Since over 70 years ago, we had trolley cars, but after 60 years, a local government in Mexico City chose to buy some of them and also some electric vehicles for the two first lines of cable bus, and also the trolley buses, elevated trolley buses. And probably this process once we have started it, we hope that it will bring good results to the city of Mexico. And also we have seen here the city of Guadalajara, which is a unique example of change. And the situation of electromobility in Mexico starts to be a reality. It is incredible, day after day we start to see the history that we have more problems go on an elevator, and solutions have to walk up the stairs. So it's a different pace. This is related with reception, with those who are clear that things have to be done, but because there are other people like us who might think the same, but we don't have the resources to make things happen. This is about also supporting financial alternatives through international funds, development banks, alternatives to improve the situation, as well as pilot tests in order to offer a better experience to our users. Among the benefits of electromobility, of course, is that a trip is much more convenient. Also, the modernization of transport systems, also the movement towards renewable energies, and also some responsible investments in order to bring down the use of carbon. Some things that we should take into account, and I like to insist that I thank you for this opportunity to be here. The problem for us is that this implementation of systems needs time in order to consolidate its introduction, especially in Latin America, the design that we use. Also the possibility to generate tax policies that would incentivize the use of these options. It will be also important to open importation schemes. Also looking for complementary public policies in different states, also in the national parliaments, to change legislation, to change the law, and to develop a framework, a legal framework, to support the introduction of these changes. Also the possibility to break down barriers, to overcome barriers during this transition through alternatives, recharging groups, also recharging a station. In Latin America, the price of transportation is taboo. You cannot touch the subsidy. It seems that it's rude to speak of subsidies. Subsidies are related with quality. And also we have to support local industry and also to use more the concept of trolleybus. And here we see a scheme of the different efforts that are being done in some of the cities of the country. And like 1 year ago, we were in this project of the Center for Development of the capital city of Mexico, which is a very large city with over 22 million inhabitants. And we must say that these efforts that are related with the quality of air, we think from the capital of the city and from Latin America, we want to recognize this illusion, this passion to offer better options to users. Thanks a lot. Well, thanks a lot. Now I'd like to invite all panelists to open their camera so that we could have a debate. That's going to be brief. We don't have as much time. I love this panel full of women, leading women. We have there Fernando, Jesus on side, and in order to be able to have a dialogue, we have issues are related with the creation of different zones and infrastructures. Mario cannot be with us, he had to leave, and we have the observatory that speaks in 3 areas. Basically, quality of data, also improving the relationships between the stakeholders, and also the optimization of routes so that this information can be used for improving the quality of life of citizens. We have this tool to project the data to have a better view of the scenarios, and we have what Jesus has said about our culture in terms of transportation, how countries have a culture that they have to change, and they have to change it with innovative policies, political leaderships, and by opening a debate on costs, because that will be the way to put to speak about quality. Now that we have this information, I like to ask Cynthia to tell us what have been the main barriers for interacting with the system of transportation at the scale of Telesina.
Hi. For us, it's a problem that we are just addressing in our project exactly. It's how to pass this information to citizens, and they not just understand because it's a very complex, a lot of information that we have in public transport, but they embrace this information. They be part of that, and ask for change in the municipality. I'm from the municipality, but I see a lot of problems in this dialogue between citizens and municipality and companies. So if you don't change the situation, how could make it? How could trust in which one will never be speaking the same language, will speak, will never think together, and it's something that we're trying to avoid in Terezina, because we spend a lot of time to explain decisions, explain what we are doing, and especially to departments that are how can I say in English? Government that ask about how the system in the municipalities is working, the supervisors, let's say that. So we spend much time in that, in not planning the public transport.
Cintia, es verdad que la comunicación.
Well, thanks, Cynthia. It is true that communication makes things easier, but this communication should be related with being accountable, with transparency, and also with the ability to involve stakeholders with their knowledge and their insight as users. So I'd like to ask Jesus if he has any recommendation to improve this relationship by incorporating the three stakeholders: citizens, operators, and the municipality or the administration, in order to improve this relationship of transparency to move towards low emission mobility. Well, it seems that we cannot see the citizens, that citizens or users are invisible. We speak a lot, we tell them many things, but we don't have a dialogue with them. Luckily, we are making efforts now to focus on users. What I mean is that those who have to agree that users are the priority are the operators and also the administration, so that we can speak the same language, because we have different resources in terms of training, because due to this lack of information, it's not easy to communicate or to reach agreement. Administration don't know much about companies, and companies don't know much about the public industry. So the idea here is to have the user as the focus of our efforts from any point of view. Then probably all these efforts will make sense. And I think we should speak more with users, with using the information brought about by these observatories. We need to know what are their concerns, so that we can guide our efforts to cover these needs. And I hope that the administration would have a closer attitude to speak to users, and also that operators in some places in Latin America, we should become more professional and would be prepared day after day to find the best ways to reach agreements and to speak closer and communicate with stakeholders. Well, thanks a lot, Jesus. I think it's very interesting what you have said because you focus on users and on how citizens should participate, should engage, because this is not only about engaging, but also the end goal is that they have a better transportation experience so that we can make better decisions when choosing the transportation mode. I like this message about the difference between the training in the public sector and the private sector. And I like to bring back the figures that Verena showed us because what we cannot measure, we cannot improve. In our team at GIC, we say that when we have figures, we can understand criteria and goals. And so, how does this tool improve the relationship of mobility between users, among users? Well, thanks, Andrea. I think that we are a little bit farther from the users as a figure that intervenes when we are formulating public transportation policies, but it should not be this way because users have an impact by making some decisions in whether we reach our goals or not. I believe that what this tool contributes is transparency, real-time transparency when you have to make decisions, and transparency is when you have to make hypotheses, when you have to formulate possibilities, because this is what we do day after day when designing public policies, especially in relation with climate change and reduction of emissions. So if we don't have this transparency, we have a black box where we put some inputs we don't really understand, and therefore we get results that we don't really understand, and at the end of the day we realize that we are not in a situation to reach our goals because we didn't reflect about this hypothesis. We didn't reflect properly about this hypothesis. Therefore, I think that we are creating transparency within the formulation of policies, which is not so much related with an exchange with users, but it's very important when making long-term plans of what we want to do. Well, thanks, Verena. So transparency, you think, might be a bridge to improve what Cynthia has said about the relationship between the municipality and the higher authorities or citizens and operators. And maybe it could be a way of improving this difference in capacities or in resources that companies have and political leaders have. In order to wrap up this panel, I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak with each other. So I'd like to ask you for an advice. What advice or what requirement would Jesus have for Cynthia in her role to improve the relationship with operators, where in Telesina they have made an effort to improve the relationship with operators? Well, we wanted to improve the relationship of the stakeholders of mobility, which is the academia, stakeholders, operators, citizens, etc. What they have done in the observatory, I think, is very important, and I think we should do this more. I think it is very important that we have a better communication. Cynthia does not have whether I want to collaborate with her. I don't know what she's doing. She doesn't know what we are doing. I think we should make an effort to have a better communication among us so that we can have more success, because in this effort of communication we can find very interesting responses. Even though we are not in the same country, I would help her with any ideas. So, better communication. There's a great effort on the side of the Observatory of Telesina to improve communications, and it is true that sometimes we meet in congresses like these ones, but then it is not easy to have a follow-up, and if there are challenges in the difference of resources, the training of companies, users, policymakers. So if you could, what would you emphasize that would support the development of the capacities of your team at Terezina in the use or in the application of the tool that Verena has? If you could speak directly to Verena, how could this calculator help you improve your work?
Hi. Example here, it's how to speak clear with them. For example, citizens sometimes don't understand a lot of information that we have. We have a lot of data, a lot of graphs, and they just sometimes there's just the bus pass in front of them. So something that has helped us here to address this information, to communicate better with citizens, exactly the tactical urbanism action, and that it will happen in a few days, but we already talk with some user to see what they think about, and it was a tricky way to show the information to them. It's more visible, more close to them, and I think it's a good way to make this bond more tight and show the municipalities together with them. It's not a different groups that speak a different language. You want different things.
Gracias, Cintia.
Well, thanks, Cynthia. Also, the platform Mobilize Your City have launched a community for practices by which practitioners or technical professionals, together with the operator level, can interact on this platform. And so before we move to Verena, we still have 2 minutes. And I'd like to remind you that the calculator is available on the website of yourcity.net. Periplo is available at the website of Imeplan, and I'm sure that at the website of Telesina you can access the information that has been presented by Cynthia. And I'd like to ask Verena something a little bit more complicated, because she will have to ask the other 2 panelists. How would you recommend in any of the 3 phases, when inventory, assessment, or scenario, how would you ask them to involve you? Well, we are working on MRV issues, and we realized that beyond the calculation was complicated, was hard, is to interact with the different stakeholders, like the transportation industry, which is segmented in small groups, small stakeholders. It is hard to get the information. So my recommendation would be that when you introduce new measures, when you introduce new contracts, you should think from the beginning, from day one, on monitoring aspects. This is not something you should add later, because later it would be a problem. For example, when you have a public tender from a bus operator or any other project of public transportation, you should include in the tender documents some devices, some mechanisms to share data, performance data, activity data, emissions data, because all this will help us later to do some monitoring, to track the information. And I think it is important that the public power creates a trust relationship with operators, and that this information can be used to improve the system, to know whether things are working right, and not to control them or to audit them or to do something against their interests. So I think we should think this way from the beginning as something that will be very helpful later on when we know how we're doing. Well, thanks Verena, thanks Jesus, thanks Cynthia. Users are our goal. Transparency is something we can get through information, and communication is key for the stakeholders to contribute and be a part of the transition that we need to move towards lower emission mobility. So thanks for this segment, and we close this conversation with this, and I give the floor back to Fernando. Thanks everyone. Alea, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure to listen to all of you. Andrea, you have been a great moderator, a very proactive moderator, and the panel has been very successful. I will take home some messages, some key messages, and some labels of what we've seen here today. We have heard of effort, collaboration, open innovation, measuring for improving, recognizing and offer opening opportunities. I think everything that has been mentioned here in this panel is that cooperation is essential for development actions where the public sector has to take place and the end users, which are citizens. And this cooperation has three aspects. One is communication, which is essential, as Andrea has said a few seconds, education and culture. How we educate socially in order to be able to implement these policies in a sustainable way. So this is the end of this panel, of this session on transition of low emission urban mobility in Latin America. Thanks to all the panel members, thanks to Maria Silva, Verena Full, Cynthia, all of you, and also Andrea Palma. And thanks everyone for being here or for being connected online. You have a good day. Thanks.